there's even less of a clear party leader than there was that time. That time you had a former vice president who had the establishment backing, but the Democrats are as fractured as they've ever been.
All right, so a couple of House races in Florida. Republicans won them by not by as much as they won them just a few months ago during the 2024 election. And the race in Wisconsin, Supreme Court race, wasn't that close, honestly. Some of the polls had it kind of close, and there was $100 million spent there. So let's start with Florida. What's your read on this? Are Democrats right to feel good about what happened there last night, even though they didn't win either of those seats?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm of two minds of this. The first thing is that we do this every cycle. The special elections come in and one side does better than expected, and they kind of crow how great it is, and the other side says, well, it's special elections and there's all these circumstances. I mean, look, if you're a Republican, you want the Republican candidate to be winning it by like 25 points, not 15. Especially Matt Gaetz's district, like the Democrat carried Escambia County, which never happens. On the other hand, though, these Democrats raised like $10 million apiece for a
True.
off special election. So that's certainly part of it. But what I think we're seeing, because the other thing that I'm a little surprised because Donald Trump's not that unpopular right now. Um, but there's this narrative that I think there's a lot of truth to that with Republicans kind of trading away working class voters for upper middle class voters, they now have some turnout problems um, in these special elections.
Well, look, it certainly is the case that Trump brings in a ton more voters during presidential races, and these are typically low turnout affairs, and a lot of those folks aren't as they're not considered grassroots activists, right? So, but let's talk about this Wisconsin race because $100 million spent, shattering all records for I think any judicial election anywhere in the United States. Elon Musk involved directly. Um, and as I said, what was the final tally here? It was over 10 points. I think 12 was the last I saw. I might have gotten a little closer than that, but um, you know,
Yeah. I saw it at 10, which is what the last two Supreme Court elections in Wisconsin have been, actually. So again, there's a couple different ways you can talk about this. The first is that, after the special elections in 2020 and 2022 for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, Republicans did fine. I mean, they didn't have great years, but they lost by similar margins and they did fine. What makes this a little bit of a special case, though, is that those two elections, Republicans had nominated someone who's probably way far to the right of the state. This time they had a kind of normie Republican from the suburbs, and he lost by 10 points too. $100 million were spent. Um,
and the Republicans spent more than the Democrats.
Yeah, so to do all that and not move the needle, not such a great sign. But again, the fact that in the past two Supreme Court elections in Wisconsin, it was a 10-point margin, and everything turned out okay for Republicans in the general elections, does seem to suggest that it's not the end of the world, though it's not a great sign either.
One of the things that was talked about why this race was so important and why Elon Musk sort of framed it as the as as the most important race in all of humanity. Sean, not just the decisions that will be coming down the pike on abortion, but redistricting potentially. Have you looked at Wisconsin? You're an expert at redistricting. Have you looked at Wisconsin and what's the situation there?
I have to be a little careful about what I say because there might be live cases coming up. But the basic idea is that this is a 50-50 state. Democrats say it's a 6-2 Republican map right now. Republicans will say, yeah, but two of those districts are clearly competitive and the political geography of the state favors us. So there's a thought that with the Democrats now controlling, or liberal members now controlling a majority, that they're likely to take up a redistricting case and, pay less attention to political geography and more attention to the competitiveness or fairness of the districts and order new congressional maps that would be more favorable to Democrats. Remember, Republicans have an incredibly narrow edge in the chamber. So, if they give up two seats here, that's almost giving the Democrats a majority right away.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll definitely keep our eye on that. Let me shift gears and ask you about there was a video announcement today by Mallory McMorrow. She's a state senator in Michigan, and she announced that she is going to run for the United States Senate. Um, you know, what do you think her chances are in a Democratic primary, given where things stand? She's one of these people, she sort of, and if you watch her video, it's really interesting. I mean, she's all about, we need to be a fighter. I'm a fighter. She sort of rose to prominence by giving this sort of flamethrower speech defending LGBTQ rights and the like. And she was lauded on, media across the board for that, and really became sort of a star within the party. She also says in her announcement that the Democratic leadership in Washington has failed. It's time for new leadership, which I'm sure Chuck Schumer was thrilled by that. But give me your sense of Mallory McMorrow as a potential candidate here, and the Democrats' chances overall in Michigan.
Yeah, so Mallory McMorrow, like you said, rose to fame with that speech on, LGBTQ rights. Look, I think the Democrats are having a bit of a Tea Party moment right now. I don't know if it's quite yet a Tea Party moment, but there are a lot of candidates there's a lot of displeasure with what the Democratic leadership in the Senate is doing. Of course, there's also limits on what they're able to do. You can't just wish the Republican majority away, and you can't fight it away. But she seems to be trying to tap into this energy. Now, there's a problem there, which is that this resonates strongly with upper middle class white activists, but it's not clear it resonates as much with blue collar minority voters who she's going to need to win a general election. So she has a strong message potentially for a primary. It's just not sure how well that's going to translate to the general. Again, it's familiar refrain on the Republican side, just seeing it pop up on the Democratic side.
Do you think that her? I mean, she touts in this in her ad about how much they were able to get done in Michigan. She lists off all the various things that they've gotten done. Obviously, Gretchen Whitmer was someone who was talked about for president the first time around on the Democratic side. I haven't really seen her name in the mix though, as we get this sort of standard list of candidates, right? And it's Gavin Newsom and it's J.B. Pritzker, my governor here. And Gretchen Whitmer's name seems to have faded from the scene a little bit, at least in what I've been seeing. Does that jive with what you've been seeing? And why is that? And why wouldn't she be considered a leader in the party?
Yeah, that's actually, I hadn't really thought about that, but it's true. Her name doesn't seem to get mentioned in the presidential sweepstakes as much. I mean, they did get a lot of progressive legislation through in the last term in Michigan, in part because, there's no filibuster in the state Senate, so you can do a lot with bare majorities in each chamber. But yeah, she doesn't seem to be getting the attention that she got in the primary. I don't know if it's because Republicans now have control of the House of Representatives in Michigan, and so, she hasn't been getting as much done, but she certainly seems more viable to me than Pritzker.
We've got about a minute left, Sean. And I do want to ask you, we talked about it yesterday, but we didn't get your opinion on this. Cory Booker just set the record for the filibuster in the United States Senate, spoke for over 25 hours. And um, I saw a clip of Frank Luntz, the Republican pollster, saying that this was, he was using this language like this was a historic moment. It forever changed the trajectory of American politics, or something that was, I found just sort of bonkers, if I'm being honest about it. Uh, what do you make of this? And why did Cory Booker do this? Typically, he wasn't filibustering against any legislation. He wasn't trying to hold up any nominations. This was just a good old talk fest for 25 hours, mostly against the Trump administration. But what's your analysis of the strategy and the plan behind this?
I mean, again, I think he was trying to I think that speech was mostly about Cory Booker and probably Cory Booker 28. He's trying to tap into that, like, why aren't we fighting enough um, moment, or that the Democrats are
It is
having
a
right
common
now.
refrain.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that I don't even know what to say on that because I don't see it as a historic moment, except to the extent that it seems to like show that politicians are actually trying to tap into this energy, suggesting it's really there on the Democratic side, their own like mini Tea Party moment.
Yeah. No, we'll see. I mean, he's an ambitious guy. He already ran for president once. I suspect he's going to try and do it again. But in this environment, why not? I suspect the Democratic field in 2028 is going to be massive. I remember last time we had two full debate stages. Like we had to go consecutive nights because there were just too many candidates. I think it's going to be at least that this time around. You disagree?
No, there's even less of a clear party leader than there was that time. That time you had a former vice president who had the establishment backing, but the Democrats are as fractured as they've ever been. Especially if Kamala Harris doesn't run, it's going to be an absolute free for all.
Yeah, and the barrier to entry now is just so low. Like anybody can get in and and theoretically make a name, as many of them, including Pete Buttigieg, have done over time. All right, we got to leave there. Sean Trende, senior elections analyst for Real Clear Politics. Sean, thanks for your time as always.
Thank you.